Alrighty. Hello. Welcome
Yeah,
back to Smokified Podcast.
yeah,
Is that our little
yeah,
sound?
yeah. I'm
Nice.
just trying to generate hype. That's all.
Perfect.
That's it. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing?
I am great. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. The last time we were talking about SOS by SZA. I also
Yeah.
realized we've got some stuff in the backlog that I just haven't uploaded. We have an episode where we go over 100 Gex song, and I thought I uploaded it.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that.
I just never uploaded, so I
All
gotta do
right.
that. But
That's all right.
anyways, today we are here to talk about the new Vampire Weekend album, Only God Was Above Us. Vampire Weekend, they're an art rock, art pop band from New York City, kind of known for like a Baroque, preppy sort of sound, which sounds like really fucking pretentious, but
Only a little bit.
yeah, only a little bit. They managed to pull it off. I think they managed to pull off being pretty heady while also being genuinely fun and like actually not that pretentious. I think at least like actually kind of self-aware.
Oh yeah.
Um, they're one of my favorite bands personally. And like I said, they have a new album out called Only God Was Above Us, and we'll be talking about that today. Before this album, they had four albums that they had released, the first three of which I personally consider to be five-star records. I really love those. We had previously reviewed their third album, Modern Vampires of the City, a long time ago, back before we were on YouTube. We have stuff on Bandcamp
Oh my gosh.
from ages ago. I
That
feel like
means
I
that
gotta,
we're OGs.
yeah,
That's it.
I think we gotta re-upload that to YouTube or something. I
Yeah.
don't even know what the login is. We'll have to find that.
I don't
Anyways,
remember what I said about that
yeah,
album.
yeah, I don't know either. I think we had that review before their fourth album came out, and their
Yeah.
fourth album came out 6 years ago now. I we were s-
No way.
I
There's no.
was maybe not six, maybe four. I was a senior in college when it came
Oh
out, and so it was a conversation before then.
yeah. It must have been.
Um, but yeah, in that video, I ranted for far too long. So I'm gonna try and keep it short today, or just
Well, that
just
was that was. I mean, at the time, that was your favorite album.
that
I
exactly. Yeah, at the time, that was my favorite album.
Yeah.
And
No.
I feel like their first two also great. I just loved the third one the best.
Of course.
The fourth one wasn't out yet, and I actually did not like their fourth album that much.
You know.
I feel like generously it's a three-star album, but
uh,
um, I don't
I
know. There are people who love it, so that's just
I
me.
think I think generally it was not received super well, at least compared to the other ones. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah. I
I've
think it's definitely the most polarizing of theirs. But anyways, that's a whole different discussion. They have their new album now, their fifth album. So yeah, we can get into it. What was your opinion on the album, Sammy?
yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give my quick thoughts and I'll give some more other general thoughts at the end as well. But I mean, I really enjoyed this album. I think it was really fun. I think that I was really surprised by, maybe not surprised, but I was pleasantly surprised by the production. I thought the production was phenomenal, like top to bottom.
Yeah.
And so that, like I've said a million times on this podcast, I love sounds. Sounds were great. So there were a lot of great sounds on this one. So that was really fun. And there were also some really interesting topics that were brought up within the album as well, which I thought was cool. Because again, not really listening for those most of the time, but like I still managed to notice them. But yeah, it was a really enjoyable listen for me. And I had liked Modern Vampires of the City, which is the last Vampire Weekend album we reviewed. And so I did kind of expect to like this one, but I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would even. So yeah.
Nice.
What about you?
Yeah, honestly, kind of similar vibes. Like I already mentioned we hadn't talked about their fourth album, but I kind of after their fourth album, like just thought they were a different band. So, but between their third and their fourth album, their guitarist, multi-instrumentalist, and producer Rostam left the band. Um, and then I've since kind of learned. Bo's going crazy in the background right now. I've since kind of learned that the fourth album was like a solo project basically of the lead singer, which I didn't really know. So I was like, yeah, I was kind of thinking the band had changed a lot. So I was going into this thinking like, I might not love it again. We'll see. I liked all the singles, so I was like, all right, I might like it better than Father of the Bride, but it probably still won't be as good as like their first three albums. But
Right.
I feel like I'm happy to report that I was wrong. I was like so surprised by how much I liked this from the first listen. I like the first time all the way through, I was like, wow, I liked every song. And like only since then, it's like songs have gone from liking them to loving them. And you
Right.
know, I, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a very, very good album, and it's just like another great one from them. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I thought it was funny that like the album released and then within like 25 minutes of it releasing, you were like texting me about how amazing it was. So I was happy that you uh had gotten enjoyment out of it and you weren't disappointed. So
Yeah.
that was big. That was big.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I stayed up to listen to it. I probably have listened to it at least 30 times
Yeah.
since it's come out. Um, just because like I even when their fourth album came out, I gave it many, many listens just to, because they're one of my favorite bands. So I was like, I want to give it a chance. But this one, like, yeah, my opinion just hasn't changed much from like that first listen to now. Like it's just like a solid album. And like the comparison that like I thought of was I don't know if you know the director Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
But like I feel like at this like I feel like that's a good director to compare Vampire Weekend to. Like they have a
Mhm.
certain like kind of preppy style and like production is kind of like a big part of their art.
Yeah.
Um and I could see maybe some people being like, "Oh, this album touches on like styles they've done before or it's
Mhm.
overproduced or something." But like saying that about like a Wes Anderson movie would be like kind of a silly thing to say. Like, yeah, maybe his older movies are a bit edgier or like not as like immaculately produced as like the newer ones, but like they're both styles are good and like you kind of go to see a Wes Anderson movie for that experience. And that's
Yeah.
kind of how I felt with this one. I was like, wow, this is just another chapter of like a good Vampire Weekend set of songs, and the production has just been stepped up. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually I think that's an interesting point you brought up because I feel like Vampire Weekend has such a distinct style that like one of the notes I wrote down for a couple of songs, I was like, this is very like typical Vampire
hmm
Weekend
hmm
sound. And so yeah, no, that makes sense that you brought it up. Um, but yeah, I love that style. So I think it's good that they stick to it because I think too often artists tend to, move away from their unique sound and try to experiment a little too much. So I don't think there's anything wrong with kind of developing like a sound that's true to you and kind of maintaining that through different albums, even when you're trying different things. So
yeah, for sure. And I feel like they do try different things on this one
yeah.
too, but they manage to keep it within their sound.
Hmm.
And and yeah, I think it also does depend on the artist. Like there are some artists that I love when they've just gone off the deep end with something like crazy that doesn't sound like anything they've done before. But at least for them, I kind of feel like that's what their last album was, and I wasn't that hot on it. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the notes I wrote, and you can tell me if you don't agree with it, but I said that this felt like an evolved modern Vampires of the City. Because again, that's only my real reference I have.
uh-huh.
Like, I thought that it built on their own sound so well, like the instrumentation and even like the melodies and stuff were just so interesting and elaborate that I was like, it just feels like a step up, honestly.
No, I agree. I feel like it steps up or like builds on honestly all of their albums. Like it kind of feels like a mixture of all four of their albums in different ways.
Mhm.
Maybe the closest sounding to their third, I would say, because it's also a little bit darker in tone, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely would agree with that, that it seems like a like it almost at times it felt like they were even commenting on their own music.
Yeah.
Um, like one thing we can get into the tracks, but specifically on the track Connect,
Mhm.
I don't know how familiar you are with their earlier stuff, but their first album, the first song on that album is Mansard Roof, and there's like a drum beat that they actually sample in this song. So like the drum hook that's in Connect is the same drum hook from that song, and
Oh, that's cool.
it's kind of cool to see because like they're also very different songs.
Mhm.
But that song just in general also kind of just felt like the most Vampire Weekendy song of theirs, like the crazy kind of pitchy pianos, these like strings going nuts and like yeah, I
Very
don't know.
upbeat, like very bright. It felt like, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, no, that is very cool. Yeah, I noticed those drums. I saw a YouTube comment that they had sampled their own drums, and I was
Hmm.
like, I don't know where
Yeah.
they're from, but okay, so now that makes sense.
Yeah.
Very cool. But yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're ready, we should walk through these tracks and
Sure.
see get your thoughts on all of them. And that's another thing. I love that this album is like 10 songs. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I feel like again, we talked about this before, but too often now they're bloated albums just to like bump up streaming numbers. So the fact that this is like a very concise like 10 tracks, even though it is like what 47 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I think
It is on the
it's
longer
yeah.
side for sure for an for a 10 track album, but everything is quality and that's all
Right.
you want out of an album. So
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree with that. Like I feel bad now ragging on the last album so much because it really isn't that bad of an album and
yeah,
there are some great songs. It just didn't work for me. But that one was I want to say 18 tracks
yeah.
maybe.
Mhm.
And I think it was only 10 minutes longer in comparison to this one. And so
Yeah.
there's some like really short songs. Actually, some of those short songs I really liked. And then there's some that like, drag on for a while and some that are hit, some that are missed. So this is like, I feel like they just got 10 solid songs together and, that there's no BS.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. But yeah, I mean, let's get into it. Ice Cream Piano. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really cool opener. And I also like the lyrics, which almost are like cynical. Well, he even uses the word cynical in it. But like just kind of I feel like he's some of the lyrics that he like says are the opening lyric is fuck the world, right?
Yeah.
But he's like almost quoting someone who would say that. Like I
Right.
feel like he's kind of being like get over yourself like to
Yeah.
people who are like so down on everything or also I feel like there's almost a commentary on like slacktivism, like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. Those are my vague interpretations of what's going on in that song. Um, but I think it's a really cool opener. I will say on after many listens to the album, it may be my least favorite song on the album.
Oh wow.
Um, which yeah, I know some people who it's like their favorite song.
Yeah.
I think it's a good song, but I just don't really see myself going back to it as much as the others outside of the context of the album. Like it feels like an opener, and I don't
Yeah.
know that I'll listen to it in a playlist or something.
Yeah, that is fair. I really enjoyed this song because again, it reminded me of a very typical like Vampire Weekend song, at least like the back half of it. Because like first
Hmm.
half a little slower, he's kind of like talking a bit.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I really enjoyed it. There was definitely a lot more political messaging, I guess, than I had expected or
Hmm.
anticipated, but it was interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of viewed it as some sort of like commentary on like political extremism,
Hmm.
maybe on
Hmm.
like both sides. So that was
Yeah.
that was kind of the takeaway I had from it. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I thought it was kind of also like I don't know, maybe a commentary on like the Western bias as well. Because there was like there was like one lyric that says like you talk of Serbians, whisper Kosovar Albanians, and I was like, oh, like I don't know. That kind of resonated with me a little bit.
Hmm.
It's kind of it's a very niche like reference that you wouldn't expect
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
in a in a in a in a song basically. So,
Right, right. No,
yeah,
I think that's definitely like on I don't know what the phrase is, on target. um I think that's right, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like,
Well, I don't know if anything can be right
right, yeah,
necessarily.
sure. I guess that's the way I interpret it as well.
Yeah,
I forget which song it was. I think it was The Surfer. Yeah, in The
yeah,
Surfer, he's like singing about the hook is like, you've never seen a starry night, you saint, like you were born under fluorescent lights, I think was
right.
the line
Yeah,
before it. And like that lyric could be interpreted as like you were born in the city and like maybe you have kind of a naive worldview.
right.
And like I feel like that could tie into what you were just saying, like a Western worldview.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I like this song a lot. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I thought it was a good opener for the album
Hmm.
because it got me ready,
Yeah.
got me hyped up to listen
Yeah.
to
Yeah, for
it.
sure. Um, But yeah, the next one, classical. I love this song. This was my favorite from the singles. When this
Mm-hmm.
came out, I was like pretty excited. I love the double drums. I think that sounds great. There's two drum tracks going on at the same time. The sax in the middle is great. And yeah, the lyrics are cool too. Just kind of like a history is written by the victors kind of message.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I like this song a lot.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this song as well. This is definitely one of my favorites. Yeah, I mean, I think this song also kind of sets the tone for the rest of the album a little bit
Hmm.
because it's like very jazzy, and I
Yeah.
felt like there was a lot of jazz influence throughout the album, uh,
Hmm.
which I really liked. But yeah, really good production, which I loved. Again, very upbeat, like Vampire Weekend, like typical song. Um, I thought that there was one interesting lyric that like I don't know, made me sad, I guess. It was like it's such a bleak sunrise, which I feel like it's just such a this depressing line.
Yeah, yeah.
Which
There's
I
another one. But I feel like there's two ways to look at it. At least the first time he uses it, I think it's 400 million animals competing for the zoo. That's
mhm,
such a bleak sunrise, right? I think that's what the lyric is.
yeah,
Which one? I don't know if that's like, I think the population of the US is 330 million. So I don't know if he was rounding
he's
and
rounding
talking
up.
about the US there. Like
Mhm,
he's saying like people competing to be in like the
yeah,
Western world or something. I don't know if that's like what he was commenting there, but I feel like the next line is him saying like that's such a bleak way to look at the world. You don't have to
yeah.
look at the world that way.
I see. I see. That's
So
interesting.
I feel like there's kind of double meaning maybe in a lot of the lyrics.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, to be honest, because I feel like a lot of the lyrics that I paid attention to, I took very literally. So I think it's very possible that like there are kind of like I don't know, not sarcastic in a way, but like there
Mhm.
is alternate meaning to a
Yeah.
lot. So that
I
makes
Without getting ahead of ourselves too much, I feel like that's also touched on in the song Pravda, which I don't know if you're familiar with what that word comes from, but oh, it literally is the Russian word for truth, as he says
yeah,
in the song, but it was
yeah,
also the like propaganda newspaper of the communist like Soviet Union
yeah,
party. So it's like, is it like in the literal sense,
right.
is it truth? Like, I don't know. So like a lot of things have double meaning, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That is a good point. We will discuss that a
Yeah.
little soon, but that is good. But yeah, this is one of my favorite songs. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we move into Capricorn, which is another single. Um, a lot slower. Which I it was a good song. I did like it. I think of the slower songs that are on this album, this is probably my favorite. Um, but yeah, it felt like very modern Vampires of the City-esque, like a
Hmm.
lot darker, kind of like a haunting melody. There was like some screeching kind of guitar, which I thought
Yeah.
was cool.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was great. I enjoyed the song a lot, and I thought it was interesting. I was reading through like the Genius annotations, and there was like some notes about Ezra Koenig kind of wrote this, intending it to be about someone who was born on December 31st and like not living through their birth year, which is apparently very significant for some people. I didn't really get that, to be honest. But I guess I thought it was in kind of an interesting
Uh,
point of view from him. So
yeah. I listened to an interview with him about this song, and he was. Have you seen the show The Sopranos?
I have not seen it, but I know
Okay.
the idea.
Yeah. Great show. It opens up with like a monologue from the main character, Tony Soprano, who like talks about he's like in a therapy session and he's talking about how he feels like he was born at the end of an era and he didn't get to like reap the benefits of the era and now he's like dealing with like just like the end of the party. Like he showed up at the end of the party basically.
Right.
Um and I think that's kind of like what the
Mm,
messaging is of this song. Yeah, that's what Ezra was saying, at least he was inspired by for this song. Um, but yeah, on the sounds are so unique. Like actually from that interview, I found out how he made the sound or how him and the producer Ariel made the sound, which was layering like distorted guitar with synths. And like
thanks.
I that sounds simple, but when you listen to it, it sounds like so foreign. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like a guitar and a synth. It sounds like a different instrument, maybe.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. The production again, as will be a theme as we discuss these tracks, but like
Yeah,
production was so good on this one as
yeah, for
well.
sure.
Um, but yeah, and then we move on to Connect then. Um, Another one again, one of my favorites on that album. The drums are great. I'm glad you pointed out where those came from. I thought that was very interesting. Again, another like very jazzy type of song. I thought the piano, like the opening piano in that was great. And like the bass was very like bouncy, so it kept you like
Hmm.
interested and involved, which
Yeah,
I thought was good. Um, and yeah, the chorus was great. It was so catchy. The melody was cool. Like I don't know. I just this is probably my favorite song on the album.
yeah. I remember when you first heard it, you texted me. You were like, "Connect fucks."
Yeah, it does. It does. It does.
Yeah, it's a
Absolutely.
great song. Yeah, this one has grown on me a lot too. Like, not to say I didn't like it at first, but like I've respected it more and more. Like, I think at first I remember like I was very hyped about this album, so I was like going on the Reddits, the subreddit for Vampire Weekend, and like there's some leaks about the album. And people were like, "Connect is the weirdest Vampire Weekend song ever," and like so when I heard it, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is pretty out there," and that's kind of how I treated it in my head. But now since listening to it, I don't really think it's that out there. Maybe it's a bit more like showy or strange
Yeah.
than some of their other stuff, but yeah, at its core, it's just a good song. So
Yeah, I think the production on it was pretty elaborate. So in that sense, I could definitely see it being maybe
mhm.
controversial. But
Sure,
yeah, again, one of my favorite songs.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Oh, I will say one lyric I thought was interesting in the song was well, I guess not a specific lyric, but like an idea. He was basically talking about at the beginning of the song how time spent in our youth, kind of like wasting time and doing nothing, basically. Like those are the memories that tend not to fade,
Hmm.
um, which made me feel really old and sad. And that's all I have to say about that. So yeah,
That's interesting. I haven't noticed that lyric yet, but yeah, that is a compelling lyric
yeah. I
or
mean,
theme at least.
I think I'm like 25, about to turn 26. I think I'm just in like my quarter life crisis. So like these things kind of, get me. Um, but yeah, so we can move
Yeah,
on.
for sure. Yeah, the next one, Prep School Gangsters. I love the end jam of like the song. Like there's like a fiddle and like I don't know, I think it's a fiddle at least. Kind of remind me of like Big Thief a little bit, but also the song as a whole reminds me of their first album. Yeah, it's a cool song. I like it.
Yeah. I think yeah, to me it was like a an okay song. It didn't like wow me by any
Hmm.
means. It felt pretty maybe not forgettable, but like just
Sure.
probably not something I would come back to. I do like the phrase prep school gangsters and kind of just like referring to like the rich elite as that because that is kind of what it feels like a lot of the time. So I
Yeah.
thought that was some cool
A
wordplay.
Apparently it's a reference to I don't know if it was a news article or like some
Yeah,
kind of
so
like journalist article about
yeah.
like these like prep school kids who were like dealing drugs at
Yeah.
their high school. So like it was like
Yeah.
they're rich and whatnot, but they're like trying to be
So
gangster, you
gangster.
know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now. It says a New York Magazine story, which described the curious phenomenon of New York City gangs comprised of an alliance of private school kids and poor Americans selling drugs. So yeah, how about that? Um, but yeah, good song. But to me, it was
Sure.
my favorites. But yeah,
Yeah. I could see that. I think also, I don't know, have you listened to their first album?
is that Contra?
That's their second. Their first is their
Oh,
self-titled.
no, I have not.
I feel like for people who really like their first album, they'd probably like this song. It's just similar vibe. Like you were saying, you liked how this album kind of reminded you of Modern Vampires. Like someone would
Right,
probably say, like, I like how this song reminds me of their self-titled. So
right. Yeah, fair. Yeah, I guess in that way, it's got a little bit of something for everyone, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But yeah, yeah. The next one is the Surfer. Yeah. What do you think about this one? Because this one, I have some thoughts on, but I wanted to see what you think first.
yeah. So it seems like this one is like the most polarizing song on the album, which is surprising to me. This is one of my favorite songs on the album.
Mm,
Maybe my second favorite, if not my first, honestly. I love the production. I think the strings sound awesome. I think the drums too are cool. Like the whole vibe of the song, like it feels like kind of like hip hop during the
yeah.
verse. And then like the chorus, it like suddenly like feels like something off of like Sergeant Pepper, the Beatles, or like a
Mhm.
Radiohead album or something. And it sounds like a cool mix of like genres and themes.
Yeah.
And I think the production's just like fantastic when the strings swell up like in the middle of the song. I think it just sounds so good. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really like this song.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah,
I would say this is probably my least favorite song on the album. I'm not saying it's bad by any
yeah,
means. I don't
sure.
think there's any bad songs on this album. Um, but yeah, I did like the drums. I saw that again, Ezra Koenig like said something about how he liked that the opening sounded like a Cypress Hill or like a Wu-Tang Clan song, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh, I can see that. So that to me was pretty cool as a hip hop fan. Um, I did like the horns and trumpets. I think it was pretty
yeah,
brief
yeah,
in the song, but I did like those. And then the guitar in the back half of the song was also really good. I didn't really understand the song. I don't know if I was supposed to, but I don't know because I was like looking at the lyrics and like really trying to understand what was going on, and I couldn't really follow anything. So I don't know
yeah,
if
yeah.
you had any thoughts on that, but yeah, I mean,
I haven't done like a deep dive, so I
yeah,
couldn't
that's
probably
fine.
walk through the whole thing.
Yeah,
But but yeah, I feel like also just the vibe of the song. I mentioned Sergeant Pepper earlier, but like there's kind of a psychedelic sound to this
yeah,
song. So I could see it maybe like if the lyrics are like not exactly coherent.
yeah,
Um, but at least I had mentioned the hook earlier that like you were born beneath fluorescent
right.
lights.
Mm,
You've never seen a starry night, you saint, which I feel like again gets to that theme of like someone who's maybe got a naive worldview.
yeah,
And um yeah, I don't know if those are the sorts of things he's talking about on the song or what,
yeah.
but yeah.
No, for sure. But yeah, that lyric is definitely something that stood out to me as well. So I'll
Mhm.
spell it out. But yeah, I mean, again, not a bad song by any means.
Yeah,
Just saying that it was one of the slower ones. And I tend to like the more upbeat stuff. But yeah,
sure.
still a good song.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone on that. I have a friend who also really likes the album, and this is his least favorite song.
Yeah,
Also, Anthony Fantano reviewed it, and this was his least favorite song in the album
yeah,
too.
that's fair.
But yeah, it's funny because like I've seen also people talk about how it's their favorite too. So seems like it's
Right.
the most polarizing for sure.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. I could definitely see that. But
Yeah,
but yeah, and then right after this one is Gen X Cops, which I think was the last single from this
yeah,
album. Um, I thought that this song right after the Surfer was interesting because it was like a pretty jarring transition from that to this one. Because this one is like so loud and in your face, while else the Surfer is pretty like laid back and kind of relaxed.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I thought it was a great song. I again love the upbeat stuff. It reminded me of Fingerback a little bit.
Okay,
So
yeah, I can
that
see it.
song also came out of fucking nowhere when I listened to it on that album.
Yeah, yeah.
So this one also, like in terms of placement, felt like that as well.
Sure.
Um, But yeah, I thought the production again was great, and I thought it was also interesting that some of the commentary on it was interesting. Kind of talks about like the like I guess socioeconomic challenges of like the younger generations now.
Hmm.
Um, and then there was a lyric that said like each generation makes its own apology.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that was a pretty powerful
yeah,
lyric there. And also it kind of like made me think it's like what problems, we always complain about the problems that were passed on to us, but we'll
yeah,
probably
yeah.
pass on to other ones to
Right.
another generation at some point. So it's just kind of interesting, interesting thoughts that were provoked
Yeah.
in this song. So which I think is the point. So
Right. Right.
but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, this was my least favorite of the singles, but it's definitely grown on me now in context of the album.
Mhm.
Also there's an acoustic version that came out, and like there's like a Japanese version of the album that has bonus tracks, and it was on that.
Mhm.
Um, I think hearing the acoustic version made me appreciate this version. Just hearing it stripped down, I started to connect more with the lyrics or something. But yeah, it's a cool song. I think that, yeah, you got it all right with like the lyrics there. Those are all the things I was thinking too. Um, one other thing I wanted to mention is the like slide guitar, which is on this song and a lot of other songs too.
Yeah.
It feels like serendipitous almost, but I had just ordered a lap steel guitar like 2 months ago, maybe.
Okay.
And then it's like all over this album.
Yeah.
Um, and like I don't play country music, and they don't really play country music. They have like a couple like on their last album, maybe. But I feel like we or they're trying to use the lap steel in like a similar way to like what I was envisioning. So it just feels interesting or like serendipitous as like, oh, like my
It
favorite
kind
artist
of,
is like doing these things that I find really interesting. So it's like, I don't
yeah.
know. It's very cool to hear that.
You just have the vision, Tate. You're gonna get called up on tour pretty soon. So
Maybe I'm just listening to so much Vampire Weekend that I'm like
you can see
streamed into the same thoughts they have.
exactly.
If only I had the same talent.
Man, it's a slow burn. It'll come. Don't worry. I'm just kidding. That's good. Okay, next song, Mary Boone, which I thought was the most interesting. I don't know if I would have thought that way if I hadn't like done a little bit of a dive in on the lyrics specifically. Um, but yeah, I thought this was a good song. I didn't have a lot of notes on the song itself, so if you have any thoughts on that, go for it. I just have more thoughts on the lyrics, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, me neither, honestly, but it's a good song. I like it. Kind of reminds me of Step in some ways.
Yeah.
But also I don't know if you know the genre Manchester. It was like a British genre in like
Oh,
the 80s.
sure.
Like basically it was like just like music for raves. So like people would drop Molly and like listen to music like this.
Sounds phenomenal.
And this song like kind of reminds me of that. It would be like a verse and then like this like really like colorful like instrumental break and then a verse and then a really colorful instrumental break. So like I feel like that's kind of the vibe of the song.
Yeah.
Um Also kind of different note, but there's organs on the song that remind me of Everlasting Arms from Modern Vampires.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's just the same organ or if it's actually a sample, but yeah, it sounded kind of familiar to me.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. Again, production so
Yeah,
interesting,
yeah, for sure.
altering, which is really cool. There's always new sounds popping up here and there. I thought the name of the song was interesting, uh,
Hmm.
because Mary Boone is, I guess, I had to look this up.
Hmm.
Some prominent art dealer
Right.
in New York City, who was in 20 like 18 or something charged for filing false income tax returns and was forced to pay $3 million in restitution
Yeah.
for taxes that she owed, and then spent 30 months in federal prison.
Yeah.
That felt like an intentional choice of song to me. Because I guess it was like the school. I was again reading about what Ezra was saying about it. He had kind of written it from the point of view of someone like trying to get her attention.
Right.
Which is interesting because you're trying to get the attention of this person who, ultimately will like give you an opportunity or a chance as like an artist.
Hmm.
But at the same time, they're not doing it for necessarily like the love of art or like
Yeah.
you as a person. It's
Yeah.
for their financial gain, and ultimately like that bit her in the ass, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so again, definitely felt intentional and also kind of drew me back to like the prep school gangster kind of
Hmm.
idea.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, just from that point of view. So I think that's why that song is interesting to me. Again, one of the slower ones, I think, if
Yeah.
I'm remembering it correctly, but like because of kind of the extracurriculars involved, I thought it was so
Yeah. There's always some like strange like references or something that
yeah.
once you go down the rabbit hole, it's like, oh, what the hell? Like
Yeah, exactly.
a
Yeah.
lot of thought went into that. But
Oh, for sure. But
yeah.
yeah, speaking of vague references, we have Pravda
Yeah.
next. So you were talking about, yeah, you had mentioned like it means truth in Russian, but also was the name of like a very prominent like communist propaganda newspaper, basically. So
Right. Yeah.
interesting double meaning there.
Yeah. This is probably my third favorite on the album. One of my favorites. It's definitely one of the slower songs. But I love how it like builds up to this like noisiness at the end. And there's also like really subtle, great production. Um, like I he's talking about an instrument at some point that the strings could never stay in tune, so he hung it up above a piano, and then you
Yeah,
hear
the
like the
balalaika.
piano. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And you hear a piano like playing in the distance, like right when he says piano.
right.
Um, and then when he says like I had a job once at Penn Station, and it like almost sounds like I don't know what the sounds are that rush in, but it sounds like a subway station or something. Um, yeah,
Right,
I don't
right.
know. I love the way it builds, and it also reminds me of another song that I love by them, Diplomat's Son.
Mhm.
Kind of similar vibe. That one's a much brighter song, but kind of like a slow burn sort of song.
Yeah,
But yeah, I like this one a lot.
yeah. This was again, this is one of my, I would say the second least favorite song of mine on this album. But again, all of it is carried, all the ones I, don't like as much are carried heavily by the production. So I still
Right.
find something to enjoy about them
Sure.
regardless. But yeah, it was a good song. I thought the references to Russia and the newspaper I thought were interesting. I didn't know if like the Russian aspect of it was like super intentional or like as intentional as I thought. You just considering like he had made some like anti-war
Right, right.
things like earlier in the album, but that was like something that had come to mind as well.
Yeah. I guess a lot of the themes that he talks about are like pretty timeless. But according to an interview that I saw with him about this song, he said that this was written before the war. So, yeah, but equally these sorts of, I mean, there's constantly been like tensions
Yeah, yeah.
with Russia and other countries. So,
So the last song on the album is Hope.
this is one of their best songs ever, in my opinion.
Wow. Okay.
It's so good. I think also I'm partial to longer songs, and this is their longest song. Um, but yeah, I love it. I think also I like the placement of it on the album, just at the very end. I feel like there's all these like kind of I don't know that they're all dark, but these like tough things to wrestle with that are being talked about on the entire first nine songs of the
Mhm.
album. And then the last song is like, there's always going to be something tough to deal with. I hope
Right.
you can let it go.
Yeah.
And I like that messaging. And it's not, I don't think it's like, I hope you can ignore it or I hope you can just
Hmm.
get over it. I think it's saying something more. Like, I hope you can do something productive with your life despite all these,
Yeah.
tough things.
Yeah.
And yeah, just like sonically too, it's like kind of folksy, but like also turns into like a noise rock song in like the second half.
Hmm.
Um yeah, I think it's great. Great conclusion to the album. I definitely keep coming back to that song. Super
Yeah.
good, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I did enjoy this song as well. It didn't on the first time I listened to it, it didn't strike me as hopeful at all, to be honest. Um, which I thought was interesting. And I
Mhm.
think probably part of, maybe what they were trying to convey. what I did think was interesting was a specific lyric. I think it's like the second line of the song. It says like the U.S. Army won the war. Well, I guess the first line is the bull has gored the matador. The U.S. Army won the war. So initially, Ezra said that that was supposed to be the U.S. Army lost the war. Um, and he realized that that was probably too negative of a tone in the album.
That's
But
funny.
he changed it to won the war and realized that that could, that has double meaning as well. Like for
Sure.
some people, that's a great thing, and then for
Hmm.
others, like, yeah, you won the war, but it's like at what cost? Because
Right.
like
Mhm.
inevitably, whenever the U.S. gets involved in a war, shit kind of hits the
Yeah.
fan. So
Also, just wars in general, how
yeah,
often are they actually a positive thing? I mean,
right,
I feel like there's few in the historical narrative where people are like, "Oh yeah, it was a good thing we did this
yeah,
war and won it." Even in those, there's so many things that people are,
yeah,
conscious of the negatives of what happened.
mhm,
Specifically, like thinking of World War II, for example.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but also specifically with that lyric, I had heard someone interpret it as the Civil War, which the
Oh,
U.S. Army won the Civil War, the Union won the Civil
mhm.
War, and I think the next lines were about the Phoenix
Phoenix
uh,
burned but did not
did
rise.
not rise, and
Paralyzed.
yeah, and so they interpreted that as the South burned and did not rise back up again. And
Right.
now half of the country is paralyzed. So it's like there's
Okay.
still this rift between the conservative and the liberal side of the US that hasn't moved forward, I guess.
Yeah,
But
that is
I
very
think there's probably a lot of ways to interpret that. There's always a side that wins and loses in
yeah.
wars, and there could be paralyzing factors on both sides to the
Mhm.
win or the loss.
Yeah, that's a really interesting interpretation. I do like that. But yeah, the song is good. I did think it did wrap up the album really well. And
Mhm.
I did think that um yeah, that message of just like there will always be like some evil in the world or some outside force causing stress or whatever, but like you got to learn to let it go,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
Find what moves you in
right,
some way.
right,
Um, but yeah, I mean, great album. Yeah, did you have
yeah.
any other kind of general thoughts on the albums you wanted to?
Yeah, let me roll through my notes real quick. I think we like kind of touched everything.
It helps when an album is 10 songs and you can talk about a
Yeah,
song.
that is true. But yeah, I guess I had some like overall like finishing notes, but generally this might be my favorite album of them. I'm not sure. I feel like that could change, but like I already made that comparison to Wes Anderson movies. It's like there's so many good ones. There's so many good Vampire Weekend albums at this point. It's like some days I might be in the mood for this one or that one, but
Right.
um yeah, it's another great one by them. It's definitely I think their most consistent. Some of their albums like they'll have kind of strange songs on, I guess, and I like them, but I recognize that they might be low points to other people. Um and I feel like the lowest lows on this album are higher than most of their other albums. But then on the flip side, I also feel like the highest highs maybe aren't as high as like some of their best hits. But to me, just as a whole thing, it's very, very good.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah,
Nice.
I mean, I'm super super happy about this album.
Yeah.
It's been in my rotation probably too much, but that's okay. I haven't gotten sick of it yet, so that's cool. I
No,
also I don't have a record player, but I ordered it on vinyl.
nice.
Um they were selling a like clear limited edition vinyl. But then it like I got a message from them that said that it broke in the mail. So then they
No,
were sending me another one, but the limited edition thing already sold out. So I'm like, do you even have another one? I don't know. So we'll see if I even get it. I don't
yeah.
have a record player to play it with, even if I do get it. So
That's good. It'll be a nice piece of wall art, maybe.
yeah, yeah.
So, no, that is cool though. I'm glad you enjoyed the album. Was there anything that surprised you about the album? Was there anything you wanted more of on the album?
Honestly, no. It was like it
Like,
it it checked all the boxes of what I could have asked for and more. And like I don't
yeah,
even think it was like fan servicey, you know?
yeah,
Like it yeah, it was just the best thing that I feel like they could have put out right now, which is like really crazy to experience, I feel like. Because I don't know the last time like a band that I loved, I was like hyped for an album and then it came out and I absolutely
you
loved the
actually
living
loved it.
shit
Yeah,
out of it. Like sometimes an album will come out and I'll be like, okay, that was good, but I still like the other ones better, you know?
right.
Like this is the maybe the first time I've been like so stoked about a new album that came out by a band that I love.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that is actually very huge. So I guess that my other question was, do you think that it's better than Modern Vampires, which I guess
Yeah.
used to be your favorite album, but you kind of mentioned that this might surpass that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I. It's hard. Like I said, it's
Yeah, it's only been like
like
a week or two. Like, you know,
it's like comparing Royal Tenenbaums to Grand Budapest Hotel. Like they're both great, and I'll be in a different mood on a different day. Um. So yeah, it's hard to say. I've gone back and listened to all their albums, their first three and their fourth two. And like yeah, they're all just different vibes. They're all good.
all
Yeah.
right, fair enough. All right, then what were your favorite songs and your least favorite? And then
Yeah.
we'll wrap it up from there.
Yeah. And I'll ask you the same, but I generally already mentioned, but I think my favorites were Surfer, Hope, um, Pravda, and Classical, if I can fit in four of the 10.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess least favorite, if I had to choose some, Gen X Cops and Ice Cream Piano.
Fair. Very fair. I think my favorites would have to be Classical, Connect, Gen X Cops, and Ice Cream Piano, and then Mary Boone as well. Although that's half the album. So and the Surfer and Pravda. I mean, again, both good, but I would say kind of the ones I would be least likely to come back to.
Yeah. It's funny how your favorites ended up on my least favorites and vice versa.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, to me, like I'm not adamantly against the song or,
yeah,
so
yeah. I mean, again, I think that's kind of the the best part of this album is that it's so consistent throughout that even the songs you may not, love, there's still something to appreciate about them, and it's still a good song at its core. So,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
but yeah, I think that pretty much wraps everything up. You have
Yeah, for
any
sure.
final
We'll have
thoughts?
to do this again in 7 years when their next album comes out, and
Yeah.
it's 10 songs long, but they're fantastic 10
The
songs.
next episode, I think we'll have to do a full debrief on the Drake Metro Boomin future
Uh,
beat, and then we'll go from there.
yeah,
I
that
think
sounds
that'll
good. Yeah, we
that'll
should
need a full 2 hours of its own. So
we can schedule that soon.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean that's been a review of Only God Was Above Us, and yeah, that's all I got, Tate. That's all I got.
Alrighty. Signing off.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.